All right, so super excited to share with all of you current listeners and future listeners in this video, because we're going to discuss how do we actually use the Ammortal process to find all the things that lead to diabetes and pre-diabetes. Now, before we get to all those details, let's talk about why we're talking about this right now. Because right now, more so than any other time in human history, the risk of having diabetes in adversely affecting your health and dying is a pretty adverse reaction, to diabetes or anything, just dramatically increased. Right? So if you look at some of the research I posted in this group, there's studies showing that if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes, your risk of dying from the coronavirus or COVID-19 is increased by 400%. Right? And so in the past, when you've been labeled with something, whether it be diabetes or obesity or high blood pressure or heart disease, hi Sue, thanks for joining. So in the past, right, you could manage those conditions with drugs and you can go about your day. You can continue to do what you believe is best for you day to day and not really feel the symptoms because you were able to just take a medication for it. However, in case you didn't know, you may not realize that the medication actually isn't resolving the condition. It's resolving the symptoms of the condition, thus leaving the underlying root cause still there, right? And so what we're about to do is find the underlying root causes. And here's why this is fundamentally important and extremely beneficial to do. You see, the things that cause diabetes, if they're not resolved, those things that are irritating your system, that manifest as symptoms of diabetes, it's still irritating your system. You're just taking potentially drugs to offset the symptoms. And those root causes will continue to irritate your system, and years or a decade later or so, sometime in the future, you get labeled with another symptom, right? And so they will give you a drug for that symptom. And then again, root cause is still underlying, and then you get labeled with another symptom. This is why in medicine, when you talk to older people, the number of drugs people get on, at least in America, continues to increase as they get older. It's because the root cause has never been addressed. It is not in the entire medical system's even frame of reality to address root causes, right? And nowhere is it taught in medical school. Nowhere is it even being used in the language, right? And so, again, we'll touch upon this just a little bit. I've spoken about this a lot in other videos. The language of medicine is designed to perpetuate the illness. This is very important. If you study NLP, right, in language, you can understand that they use things like you have diabetes, right? If we bypass that language and say, oh, you currently have behavior choices, right, that are leading to the inability of your body to process insulin and blood sugar well. If we word it that way, of course, the logical mind would go to, okay, so what are those choices that I'm making? And now we're speaking the language of root causes, right? And so I want to be very aware of that. And so let's just jump right into what are the things that can lead to diabetes. Well, doctors typically only look at you from a biological perspective, right? So they give you insulin, they give you glucophage, they give you different drugs and different medications designed to manage your blood sugar. And again, keep in mind, this is purely from a biological reality. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start with biological because it's the most familiar. However, we're not going to speak about biological in terms of a drug to suppress symptoms perspective. We're going to speak about biological in terms of a root cause perspective. And of course, if you currently have diabetes or pre-diabetes, we will also talk about biological stuff that can help you suppress the symptoms with natural substances. Now, before I get into those two categories, I want to clarify. Right now in the alternative medicine, naturopathic medicine, biohacking world, people are just using natural things to suppress symptoms. Right? In other words, instead of taking a medication to manage your symptoms, you will read, if you go online and read all about biohackers, about natural things you can take to lower your blood sugar. Keep in mind that is still not addressing the root cause. Right? You're just using a natural substance to manage your blood sugar. That is not the same as addressing the root cause. This is a very, very important concept I want you to understand, right? Because if not, the root cause is still brewing other illnesses and diseases. You're just suppressing symptoms with something less caustic, right? So, what are some of the root causes of biological diabetes? Well, if you look at the research, essentially, chronic systemic inflammation is the root cause of almost all infectious or non-infectious illnesses, right? In other words, other than licking a doorknob and you get sick, other than that, almost all diseases, the root cause from a biological perspective is chronic systemic inflammation. Right? So once you realize that, then we go, well, what are all the things that lead to chronic systemic inflammation? And so one of the biggest things is going to be your gut health from a biological perspective. So taking care of your gut health is massively important. And, I was just in Japan for a couple weeks. And interestingly, this might be a little bit, too much information, but my stool quality is way worse here than when it is in Japan. I kind of thought about this and said, well, why is that? Right? And so, well, in Japan, on a daily basis, I was eating fermented foods, right? Just a natural part of their diet, fermented foods. And it is not a natural thing that's part of the natural American diet, or a daily American diet. Like, I'm not eating sort of fermented foods every day. And also, the vegetables that they're eating, even I'm sure the oils that they're cooking in, just their food quality innately is more healthy, right? And so it's much healthier for a gut. And so, the solution isn't to move to Japan. I mean, it could be. I highly recommend it. It's pretty amazing there. But if you choose to live in North America, you might want to, hey Katrina, hey Joel. So you might want to consider adding fermented foods to your nutrition plan on a regular basis. And you can just, Google fermented foods. I don't have to name them here for time's sake. Also, if your poop, I want to really make a music video about, let's talk about poop. And so if your poop has not been solid and consistent and happening around the same time of day, if not, it clearly states that there's something off about your gut, right? This is a super simple question I believe every doctor, naturopathic person can ask an individual. That is a great indicator of their gut health, which is a great indicator of their systemic inflammation, which is a great indicator of illness and disease risk, right? Super simple. How are you pooping? Right? And so that's off. You absolutely want to take action to resolve your gut. So if it's just slightly off, you're like, it's 90% solid. I'm going about the same time 90% of the time within 30 days. If it's just slightly off, then the recommendation would be taking a good probiotic and taking some colostrum and some zinc carnosine. Right? Those three will restore. If you're only 10-20% off, it'll restore it. However, if you're like, wow, it's really off, there's days where it's like solid, some days it's runny, some days it's this color, some days it's that color, some days I don't go, some days I go. If it's that off, you probably need an entire gut healing protocol, right? Because if it's that off, you probably have a lot of inflammation in your gut. You probably have some bacteria strains that don't belong there in high amounts. You probably have the good bacteria basically is probably low. And so that involves an entire protocol. Now, we do have gut protocols, and I've actually made them free, right, because of the coronavirus, completely free. We used to sell these protocols, but right now, completely free for the masses. And so if you go to bodysolutionsinc.com, which is my brick and mortar business, go on blog, and it might be the last post or two. It says like action items for coronavirus. There, you'll find a link to the gut protocol, and I made it completely free. And so you can do the entire protocol, right? So that will help address the biological root cause of chronic systemic inflammation that can lead to diabetes and prediabetes, right? Now, that's a root cause. For supplements, there are supplements that you can take right now that can immediately help you process blood sugar better, right? One of them is alpha lipoic acid, right? It basically makes your cells more sensitive to insulin, right? And so this is a much better option than taking things like glucophage, some of the medications out there. The reason is alpha lipoic acid, interestingly, is a super duper water soluble and fat soluble antioxidant, right? So in other words, not only does it help your body manage and absorb the insulin and blood sugar better, it's actually a powerful antioxidant, right? Antioxidants are important because they decrease inflammation, they slow down aging, slow down or minimize damage to your DNA, which is awesome. right? And so another supplement that you can take is corosolic acid. It's an extract from the banana plant. And some studies show it can actually decrease your blood sugar by 32%, which is massive. And again, it's also been shown to decrease inflammation. It's been shown to preserve your brain health. Like, these natural things are much better for you than some of the drugs. And then keep in mind, though, you don't want to just keep taking the natural supplements. They're only suppressing symptoms still. You want to do things to heal your gut to suppress the root cause. Now, there's some other root causes that affect the biological, but we'll talk about them because they're more in the environmental world, right? So we'll go to that, right? And so, in fact, let's just talk about, we'll transition. So that's the biological. Now we're going to go to environment, right? Second of 5 realities. In the environment, there's air quality. There's massive amounts of studies showing that if you have small particle dust in the air that you're breathing, that drastically increases systemic inflammation, which then leads to, it's actually one of the biggest predictors for heart disease, much better than cholesterol, right? Fascinating if you think about it. Your air dust volume, right, the size of the dust and the density of the dust is a better predictor for heart disease than cholesterol. Stuff your doctor won't tell you. This is published medical research. And so I would highly check your air quality, right? And so there's, things you can buy on Amazon. It's about $100. You click, and it tells you the dust size. It's like PM 2.5, particle mass 2.5, or PM 10. That tells you the size of dust particles. And then density, right? There's a number that tells you how much dust is in the air. And so I can tell you that most indoor homes and offices have actually pretty poor air quality. And so some solutions, right? You can get better filtration systems in your house, like use a better filter in your HVAC system, or you can get an in-home air filtration system, like a little, plug-in unit, right? Either one. Really, the filter is the better option. But look into the HVAC system. Some HVAC systems are meant to only push through a certain density of filtration, and you might find that you can't get a high density filtration system because it's too much resistance for the entire HVAC system. And then in that case, it's cheaper to get a plug-in unit versus replacing your entire HVAC system, right? So this is a little more detail into this process. And so your air quality is massive. The other thing about environment, having to do less with inflammation, more about psychological behaviors. In other words, what's in your environment that's affecting your behavior relating to diabetes and pre-diabetes is simply your snacks, right? I mean, do you have snacks laying around, or are they put away, right? Because if they're laying around and they're in your visual field, they will trigger you to eat those snacks. Like right now, where I'm sitting in my kitchen, I can see a cupboard that's actually open right now, and there are actually some packaged goods. Like in my reality, I've spoken about this in other videos, 80% of the time, don't eat anything that's been through a bag or a machine that's in a bag or a box. 20% of the time, it's okay, right? And, assuming you're relatively healthy. If you're really, really sick, then it needs to be probably like 95-5. But for general masses, 80-20 works. And so I'm looking right here, right now, and I can see there's, even though they're organic and we buy non-chemical stuff, but yep, I can see for sure there's like snack foods in my visual field. And no matter what, even if I'm looking at the screen, looking at all of you right now, I can see that in my peripheral vision. And absolutely, it is affecting me subconsciously to be like, ooh, maybe later on I'll go get some snacks. Right? So be very aware of your environment, what's in your environment in your visual field. Right? So right here, I actually have some, I have some lemons, some bananas, some apples, some oranges right there. Right? So again, be aware of your environment. What is in your environment that may be triggering you to take specific actions related to your nutrition, essentially, right? So just being aware of your environment. And lastly, it's going to be your workstation, right? If you do work on a computer, are you sitting or are you standing? If you're not standing, I highly recommend either getting a standing desk or converting your workstation into a standing desk. You can buy a VeriDesk, or you can actually go on Amazon and type in VERI, I believe, VeriDesk, and then their knockoffs will appear. And so VeriDesk is going to be like $350-ish. Their knockoffs are $150. So you put it on your desktop, you crank a lever, and it comes up. So you can basically transform your sitting workstation into a standing workstation. And if you're standing, just make sure you're kind of moving your body throughout the day, right? So that environment, that work environment, will produce more movement in you. Okay, so those are the 3 environmental things: air quality, what's around you, what things and food items are you placing around you, and your workstation. So now we're going to go into the third. We might as well transition to body, right? This is the third out of 5 realities you want to look at. And essentially with the body, you want to keep your body moving, right? Your body does not and was not designed to be still for long periods of time. And so, of course, by having a standing workstation, awesome, Joel, you're standing right now, great, right? And so you want to make sure you're moving your body. And so having a standing workstation is great. You can actually even buy a simple balance board that rocks side to side and stand on that while you're working on your computer. That gets some movement. And create a movement program in your life. If you notice, I'm not using the word workout, right? That word has been tainted. Most people don't enjoy a workout. They do it as a tool to get something. So if we bypass that language and use, hey, how do we create an enjoyable movement program that opens up the reality? In other words, most people, when they think about workout, they think about a gym. But an enjoyable movement program could be playing with your kids. It could be gardening. It could be building something in your garage. It could be dancing. It could be so many things, right? Whatever you enjoy. So be very crafty and careful and choosy with the language that you're using in your life. I could do a whole nother 5-hour lecture on that, right? And so language is extremely important because it dictates your reality. So I would recommend asking your consciousness for an enjoyable movement program that you can do on a regular basis and see what comes up, right? That will keep your body moving, because when your body moves, when your muscles move, your muscles that are being moved becomes much more sensitive to insulin, right? Which is why you have diabetes. It's the desensitivity to insulin. And so by simply moving on a regular basis, you can mechanically basically address the root cause of the lack of sensitivity to insulin, right? So next we're going to go to mind, right? So the mental is the 4th out of 5 realities that we can look at as part of our motor process to resolve things. And so in the mind, I highly recommend using this process of a food journal. Now, not just writing what you eat. In fact, I will somehow figure out how to get. We have a food journal. I will put a link somewhere around here, and you can just get it. I'll put a Dropbox link. That'll be easier. And so it's all about our relationship with food. And thank you, Sue. Yes, it is definitely. I want things to be actionable. Because knowing without acting is actually not helpful, right? In fact, it creates guilt if you don't act on the things that you know. So I want to make sure things are very actionable. And so when it comes to mind, it has everything to do with our relationship with food. In fact, don't even need a journal. I'll tell you what to do. Super easy. I'm a huge thing of less steps. Like getting you to download the thing and printing it out and using it, that's too many steps. Here's what you do in defining what your relationship with food is, right? So you just write down, if you're about to eat breakfast, you write breakfast. And then you write, what's the emotion that I feel before I eat? What's the emotion that I feel during eating? What's the emotion that I feel after I'm done eating? You also journal, what's your hunger scale before and after? Right? The hunger scale means 1 is I'm so hungry, I'm going to eat my own arm. 10 is I'm so stuffed, I can't even breathe. 5 is neutral. 5 is I don't feel anything. And then of course, the next thing you want to rate is how healthy the food was. Like 10 would be like super organic, healthy, full of nutrients, very colorful. 1 would be like a fried Twinkie, right? And so what this does is it gives you all the data points for you to discern what is my relationship with food. Now let's put that into action in a case scenario, right? Here is a very common process. Someone spends all day tuning out of their internal selves, right? They're quote unquote working. I normally don't use that word, that's the air quotes. And so in my reality, we're just applying our attention and playing, right? I choose that reality. It's my life is fun. And so, but for the masses, we'll say you're working. And so essentially what that means is your attention is not within, right? You're not actually going, let me nurture myself for the next 7 hours. You're saying my attention is outside and I'm producing something. I'm contributing, right? That's also a great substitution to the word work. It's contribution. I'm contributing. However, by the end of the day, or you're doing stuff for other people, right? Maybe you're taking care of your kids or your family, something external. By the end of the day, you have this like, wow, I haven't spent anything or done anything for myself. And so there's slight discomfort, right? Maybe the emotion before is, I'm actually feeling a little, some people, a common word would be like stressed. Maybe I'm feeling, wow, I feel off. Depending upon your emotional intelligence, you can choose what word. And so therefore you choose some kind of comfort food, right? This, again, mass media label. I typically don't use these words, but for ease of communication right now, you'll eat some kind of comfort food. And then during that eating period, you feel good, you feel happy, you feel satisfied, you feel taken care of, you feel nurtured, you feel loved, whatever that may be. However, afterwards, typically it's, I probably shouldn't have eaten that, or I shouldn't have eaten that much. And you might feel guilt. You might feel even shame. You might feel regret, whatever that is. Right? Yeah. So that's the emotional ride. Did I wait until I was a 2 before I ate, and I ate until I was a 9? Or did you simply eat when you were a 4, which is slightly hungry, and you stopped at a 6? That tells you the spectrum of hunger in which you're deciding to live in. And of course, then, how healthy was the food, right? 1 to 10. All those data points gives you extreme clarity on what your relationship with food is, right? Because it starts at the relationship. This goes to anything. Your relationship with spouse, money, finances, job, self. It's the relationship that matters, right? Most people are focused on the thing, not the relationship with the thing. And so that is a powerful, powerful exercise you can do from a mental aspect related to diabetes, right? Or pre-diabetes. Because you might find that a lot of people are triggering themselves in a way to consume excessive amounts of sugar and carbohydrates, thus the diabetes. From a biological perspective, but we're seeing this from a mind perspective, right? The second part of mind is like stress reduction. I know there's a lot of air quotes. I typically don't use these words, right? And so again, for ease of communication, I'm using these words in this video. And so essentially the word stress is a symptom, right? I'm a huge fan of using language to talk about root causes, right? People all talk about stress management, stress reduction, stress release, stress blah, blah, blah. Keep in mind, this is all very purposeful by the mass media, which controls and influences doctors and practitioners. They haven't realized that that is a language of symptoms. Because if you simply reframe, if you told a different story, there would be no stress. That is the root cause, how you're framing the reality, right? What's the story that you're assigning to the situation, the story you're assigning to everything. Because right now, let's apply it to the coronavirus, right? The mass media words would be like, it's crisis, it's chaos, it's traumatic, right? Doesn't have to be. You could give it a different word, right? And you can craft a different story. I call it the greatest opportunity. Because what's really happening is the biggest amount of change, right? Change, which means the biggest amount of energy movement is happening in the history of modern times. You get to decide what that change and movement of energy means. It doesn't mean crisis or trauma or all the stuff that mass media uses. You get to craft a story. In my reality, it is the biggest opportunity for humans, right? I mean, this video is coming from the fact that there's coronavirus, right? There wouldn't be this video, 6 months ago. And so you get to craft a story. So be masters of crafting your story that then basically eliminates the symptoms of stress, right? Just know that you are the crafter of your reality and your story. So choose your reality and your story carefully. Know that everything that's happening with you, to you, and for you in your life is 1000% the result of your stories. Yeah, you're crafting the reality, right? So something biggest aha you can ever take. If you took nothing away from this video, take that, right? And so when you own that, and then even better, when you practice it, and even more amazing, when you master it, you are mastering your reality. Your reality is dictated not by anyone else, any situation, any external. It is dictated by you. Granted, you cannot control the situation. I can go over to your house right now and stab you because I'm pretty fast and strong. However, you get to decide the story of what that stabbing means, right? You can say, hey, Steve's a dick. He attacked me. I'm so angry. Or, ooh, Steve knows that pressure point right there resolves my ailments and he just healed me. Oh my God, that's amazing. Thank you. Right? You get to craft a story. So, lastly is going to be energy. This is the reality that is the least practiced, least known. It's been labeled as woo-woo. However, I'm going to science it, so it's not even woo-woo, right? So if you're watching this video and you haven't heard me speak about this, here's the science. Since 1984, scientists have measured this, right? This is not woo-woo. This science means measured. 90% of our DNA do not make proteins. They do not dictate how we look and how we behave. 90% of our DNA makes photons, light particles, that broadcast away from us as waves. And any wave can carry data and information. In other words, 90% of us, our DNA, is projecting data out into other people, out into the universe, into all other objects, which, by the way, have their own consciousness, a whole nother video. And so we're constantly changing and affecting our reality, right? And so what does that mean? It means, what if we can control that broadcast? If we were a radio antenna or Wi-Fi router, what can we do to broadcast different signals, right? Because broadcasting these signals absolutely affects our physiology, right? And so we can see symptoms of this root cause in multiple other examples. For example, there's a Japanese researcher, Dr. Emoto. The original research was he wrote different emotions on water, pure water, froze it, looked at the microscope, and what they found was that the crystal formation was very different depending upon if they wrote love or hate. And of course, there's been subsequent tons of work where you get two things of water, you talk loving things to one, and you shout and be very angry at the other, and give it a couple months. One will be clear, and one will be cloudy and dirty, right? And so our energy, our broadcasting of our particles is affecting matter all around us, but obviously it's affecting matter in us, right? Because we're lots of water in us. If we can change external structure of water, obviously we're changing the internal structure of water, right? It's a lot closer, it's inside, right? And so now the premise is, how do we affect this? What's a simple practice, right? Concept stuff, mind-blowing, yes, but what's the actionable? It's coherence breathing, right? And so there's a lot of things you can do, meditate and all that stuff, but what I found the simplest practice is coherence breathing. And so one of my favorite tools for that is HeartMath. If you're not familiar with HeartMath, just go to HeartMath. And essentially, it's a device that you can have. Actually, I have it, they've been planned for this, interestingly. I have it right here. And so you can clip this onto your ear, and then you plug this into your phone, and they have an app, right? And the app basically trains you to breathe at about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. And it knows, interestingly, because it's tracking your HRV and some other data, how you're feeling, right? You can actually play with it. If you get this device, this is going to be $130. And there's some other apps that attempts to do this. It's not quite as accurate, but there's some other apps that tend to do this, or that tries to do this, where you put your finger over the camera in light, and it uses that to try to accomplish this. They're not quite as effective as this. I found this would be way more accurate. And essentially, when you train yourself to coherence breathe 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, what you'll find is that if you're thinking loving thoughts, their score of coherence starts to increase. And if you're thinking of logic, logistical to-do lists, it will drastically decrease, right? And so what this is essentially is a training tool to get you to breathe in this 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out. Technically, it's 5.5 seconds is the average. So 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And it trains you to open up your heart space. We'll use some woo-woo words. Open up your heart space as you're breathing. And what this does is to put your body into the vibrational frequency of coherence and alignment and healing. And this is one of the best practices you can do from an energetic perspective that's immediate, right? Because you have biofeedback. That's a training tool. So just to review, right? So we started with the biological, right? That's going to be healing your gut and taking the specific supplements, alpha-lipoic acid, there's some probiotics to heal your gut, and chlorosolic acid to manage the blood sugar. Then we transition to environment, right? So environment, you want air quality, HVAC system filter change, or in-home plug-in air filtration system. Environment, where are you putting your snacking stuff? Make sure if you have them, ideally don't have too much, but if you have them, put them away. They're not in your visual field. And then workstation, change your workstation to be standing. Then we went to body, which is you want to make sure that you ask yourself, what is a fun, loving, fulfilling movement program I can do on a regular basis? And then we went to mind, which is about relationship with food, right? Using that process that I spoke about. And then, of course, understanding you are the controller of your reality and you get to reframe things. And lastly, we ended with energetic. Yeah. And that's basically so many things you can do, but use HeartMath, right? And so put those into practice. Those 5 things are not just managing, they're absolutely addressing the root causes of the symptoms of diabetes and pre-diabetes. So hopefully you found this helpful. I'm actually going to do more of these types of videos on different conditions, different cases. If that's a yay, give a like or a shout out and say yes, that would be awesome. Because I feel like, just think, in my reality, if I had a library of these and we went over like the top 10 conditions and people had this would be profound for people, right? So I'm just making sure I'm gauging if there's interest in that. I'll spend the attention and go make this, right? All of you have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your day and put those things into action. Feel free to share this. I know this is in a private group. I wanted this to be private, but share the information. Take notes and share it with your friends and family.